Aloha, ikomo mai. You're about to view a 10-minute documentary on the Pearl Harbor attack, and I produced it for a definite reason. It resonates with me. When I was 18 years old, I joined the U.S. Navy, went to Norman, Oklahoma for aviation school, and spent the war years, World War II, in the Pacific. So when I produce this video, I think fondly back of my comrades in arms. So please come with me now as we go back to December 7th, 1941, and we remember Pearl Harbor.
On this date, the Japanese Empire struck a crippling blow at the United States fleet, Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The next day, President Franklin Roosevelt spoke to the nation.
We will gain the inevitable triumph, so help us God.
In planning the attack on Pearl Harbor, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, a brilliant strategist, knew that victory would depend on air power and the shock element of total surprise. The Japanese task force of 30 warships left Japan November the 25th, taking the treacherous northern route to Hawaii. Surveillance here was minimal, but ships and men were at the mercy of some of the worst weather conditions known. Undetected, the 6 aircraft carriers of the task force arrived at launch position 240 miles north of Oahu the morning of December 7th. At 6 a.m., the first of 2 waves was airborne in 15 minutes. 183 planes heading for Hawaii, primary target Battleship Row, where the major ships were moored in pairs, outboard and inboard. First to take off were the Zeros to provide immediate cover for the carriers. Next, torpedo bombers with pilots trained to fly 50 feet above the water, then release their torpedoes at the outboard ships on Battleship Row. Dive bombers and Kate high-level bombers then took off. Some of them carried 1,760-pound armor-piercing bombs that could smash through any superstructure. Commander Fujita, in the lead plane of 50 high-level bombers, monitored a Honolulu radio station that morning for the current weather forecast. Visibility good, winds 10 knots, partly cloudy. He sent a coded message, Tora, 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 to the fleet. Complete surprise, the attack was underway. At 8:10, an armor-piercing bomb plunged into the Arizona. The explosion, which rocked the harbor, killed the Arizona and her crew. The carnage was on and would continue until about 10 a.m. Parts of residential Oahu were hit by shells which exploded on impact, setting numerous house fires. Small wooden houses fanned by palm trees blazed furiously. Fires reported in Nu'uanu Valley, downtown Iwilei, Waipahu, a makeshift first aid station set up in Lunalilo School for the wounded in that area. Part of the overall plan was for 5 Vigilant submarines to stay on the bottom of Pearl Harbor, surface when the attack was over, and disrupt shipping. The 5 were sunk or beached, like this one on the windward side. 200 miles west of Oahu and steaming for home port was Task Force 8 with the carrier Enterprise under Admiral Halsey. 18 of her planes headed for Ford Island, which was under furious attack by enemy planes. American gunners shot down many of the planes from the Enterprise without checking. The rest veered off to other, safer fields. Of the 353 planes which left the Japanese carriers that morning, 29 did not return. Mission accomplished. The task force left for home around 1 p.m., leaving a scene of utter destruction. In the attack that morning, high-level bombers had pinpointed Hangar 6 on Ford Island. Bombs and fires destroyed or damaged 70 flying boats, float planes, and scout planes. Other bases on Oahu were also severely hit. Schofield, Hickam, Wheeler, Bellows, Kaneohe, and Eva. Over 300 planes destroyed and many men killed. Some of our planes managed to take off and reportedly shot down 12 enemy planes. A preliminary damage report disclosed that in less than 2 hours, the Japanese had sunk 4 battleships, 1 mine layer, 1 target ship, damaged 4 battleships, 3 cruisers, and 3 destroyers. Before salvage operations got underway, a full-scale search was launched for anyone trapped in air pockets on damaged or sunken ships. Many were found in time. For others, time and air had run out. The battleship Nevada, a moving target in the channel, was ordered grounded for fear that she would be sunk and bottle up the harbor. At Pearl Harbor, the fuel tanks and submarines were untouched. Pacific-based carriers were not in port. Ship repair facilities were still operational. 15 of the 17 major ships in port that morning were put back into service. 13 saw combat against those who had tried to destroy them. With the attack on Hawaii, Japan transformed the European conflict into a world war. The Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan, against the Allies, the United States, United Kingdom, Russia, and China. The battle was joined. June 6, 1944, D-Day in the European theater, the invasion of France was finally underway. The first step by the Allies in a hard-fought village-by-village march across Europe to Berlin. An unconditional surrender by Nazi Germany, May 8, 1945. In the Pacific theater, the Allies were island-hopping toward their objective, occupation of islands close enough to the Japanese homeland to mount an invasion. Names of sea battles and islands where the fighting was savage became legend. Coral Sea, Midway, Guadalcanal, the Gilberts, Marshalls, New Guinea, Marianas, Philippines, Iwo Jima. Uncommon valor shown on both sides. However, nothing could stop the drive to the heart of the Japanese Empire, not even the feared kamikaze pilots on their suicide missions. Then, for the first time in the history of warfare, a new element was introduced, the atom bomb. July 26, the Allies issued an ultimatum: accept the Potsdam Declaration or face ultimate destruction. America had 2 atomic bombs in her arsenal. August 6, she dropped 1 on Hiroshima, 60% of the city destroyed. August 9, she dropped the second on Nagasaki. Nearly half the city leveled, 74,000 persons killed outright. August 10th, the Japanese accepted the terms of the Potsdam Declaration. September 2nd, 1945, units of the U.S. Pacific Fleet rendezvoused in Tokyo Bay for the formal signing of the instruments of surrender aboard the battleship Missouri. Among those in attendance, Chester W. Nimitz and General Douglas MacArthur. Admiral Nimitz addressed the fleet.
On board all naval vessels at sea and in port and at our many island bases in the Pacific, there is rejoicing and thanksgiving. The long and bitter struggle which Japan started so treacherously on the 7th of December 1941 is at an end. I take great pride in the American forces which have helped to win this victory. America can be proud of them.
From the White House, Washington, President Harry S. Truman spoke to the nation.
I deem this reply a full acceptance of the Potsdam Declaration, which specifies the unconditional surrender of Japan.
The world knew peace for a time. Leaders in world capitals and major cities such as Washington, Berlin, Tokyo, New York, London, San Francisco could focus and plan for the future without the day-to-day turmoil of war and survival. Pearl Harbor is in the history books now, but in Hawaii it is still very real. Many visitors to the islands come to the Arizona Memorial to pay their respects to all who fought in World War II. And some perhaps offer a special prayer to those who died on the battleship Arizona. Born, the Brooklyn Navy Yard, 1913. Christened and launched, June 19, 1915. Died, Pearl Harbor, December 7, 1941.